Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this Discover Dorico session for February 2022. This session will kind of follow on from the iPad launch that we did back in July 2021, and then we did another session in August on the iPad 1.1 update, and this is now the iPad 2 version, so we're going to carry on and show you the new features that are in that new version. You can see at the bottom of the screen down here there's a version number, 2.0, so if you have the same version then you can follow along, and if not, go to the App Store and you can update from there. So let's have a look at what some of the new features are in this version. If we switch over like this, you'll be able to see as I tap on the screen here to load a project. This is one that we used in a previous session, so we can kind of carry on from there if you like. And then so below down here you can see as I click and move, or if I use an Apple Pencil and on the screen you can see that one, and then over there you can see a much larger view of what it is we're actually doing and where the features are and where the buttons are and that kind of thing. So I'll turn me off, so you don't need to see me, and let's continue. So let's get started with some of the new features in this iPad version 2. The first is that while we have the section down here with the key editor, and you can resize this section, and you can click, if you click on the bottom here, then this is going to show you the note velocities. So if I just select, for example, the electric piano part here, then you can see the note velocities down here. And now as well there's an add automation option so that you can choose a CC, like for example modulation, and you now have modulation control, so I can either draw them in, or if I had a MIDI file, then Dorico would be showing me that anyway if it had imported that information. You can edit these as well, so if I pinch and zoom here and move across, then you can grab a point. Maybe if you have an Apple Pencil, you can do this with a bit more fine control, so I can move this and edit these steps as I need to. There's also a conversion option, so if you need to convert it to a step or a line, then you can do that as to, this would continue until that point, or it can gradually move between those points over time. So you have these controls. You can then switch back to velocities at any point, switch back to the CC1 data that you've used at the bottom here. So everything is displayed as you'd expect, I think. And the CC options are also labelled, so if you click on Add Automation, then for example breath control, volume, or if I choose some of the other ones, then you can see that they're labelled in here to see what you need. If you click on the top section here, then this bit will expand. If you click on the bottom section, this will expand, so you have hopefully all of the options that you need from there. So let's close that bit. Also, some of the buttons are over here on the left-hand side, so as we're looking over here, these have changed slightly, so you've got these little extra corners which show you can long press on them. So for example, if I choose a note here, and I can do that with my finger, or I can use an Apple Pencil, then the options down here on the left-hand side have now changed. So for example, the one here for grace notes, if I choose that one, I can now just turn a note into a grace note, and that was with a slash. If I long press on this first, then I get the option to choose what sort of grace note I want. So if I want an unslashed one, then I can do that, so that now when I click on the button, then I'll get an unslashed grace note. And there's some options for how all of those kind of things work. So it's a long press, and then you can choose the option that you need. What we also have here is, for example, a long press for things like the tuplets options, and for the dotted note durations and those kind of things as well. Let me just move that out of the way. So there's a long press on a lot of those options now, and you can choose the type of things that you, the options that you need when you then press on the button. If you have a QWERTY keyboard attached, then you can use the jump bar. So the QWERTY keyboard could be an Apple one, or it could just be any Bluetooth keyboard. You can even plug in a USB keyboard if you have an appropriate adapter. And if you have that kind of keyboard, then you can just press J for the jump bar, and this will let you run commands. So for example, if I decide I want to run an instrument filter, or if I maybe have selected a note and I want to run something else, then you could run things like a double note duration, that kind of thing. You can run these commands directly from the jump bar if you want to. So if I was to say, let's choose some notes from here, and then press J for jump bar, then I could say things like double note duration, and I could run that command straight from there if I want to. You'll notice the instrument preset filter was in there as well, so I'll show you how that kind of thing would also work in a minute. There's also some options for capos for fretted instruments now. So if we just move up to this guitar part up here, see we've got the chord symbols across the top. If I go back to setup mode here, and then choose that electric guitar part, then there's a little 3 dots down here. So I just point with the Apple Pencil, little 3 dots at the bottom here. And if I choose that one, then I can choose chord symbols, and you can choose that your capos are going to be shown. The main chord symbol is shown for the capo, or the transposed chord symbol shown for the capo. So if I choose that one, then I get a transposed version. And you're saying, well, how do you set which one that is? If you click on this little 3 dots again, chord symbols, at the bottom here you can say show, the capo chord symbol definition. So if I choose that one, at the moment it's set to B flat. So if I just change this maybe to E flat or something instead, then the chords will update as well. So you might want to label, what the capo is at the beginning of the score, but the chord symbols can be shown that way. There's also options if you want them to show the capo chord symbol above the main, so you can have both sets of chord symbols if you want to. And there's various other, display type options for those depending on what you need. So all of those options available here in the chord symbols, which is this little 3-dot menu at the bottom down here. There's also options, if we just go back to write mode for a second, for things like numbered bar regions. Now this it feels like it's a little bit hidden. If I make a selection here of some notes, then numbered bar regions actually doesn't exist at the moment as a button as such on the screen, but you can do it as a shortcut. So if you go up to the menu in the top right hand corner and you choose preferences, then you can go to key commands and you can search in here for the numbered bar regions. I've already done that and I've set a shortcut, so if I now press my shortcut for that, then I get a numbered bar region, and I can see that because I've got these little circles at either end that shows me where they exist. Now by default, numbered bar regions won't show up in the score, they'll just show up in a part, and you can change this in layout options. So if you open layout options either from the menu over here, or if you just press the shortcut for layout options, then you can get to layout options, players, and in the numbered bar regions section here, it will say show bar count in numbered bar regions. So are you going to show these kind of things at all? Now if you jump to the part, well, I'm just going to press W. You can also of course use this drop down, but I'm just going to press W because I have a keyboard attached. Then you can see in the part, then it is on. So you can see them in here. And now this is selected in the properties panel, of course, at the bottom. You can change some of the options and the properties for these. So you can say, for example, do you want the range appearance? This, it's showing 1 to 4. So you could say, actually, no, maybe I don't want to show the range, or any of the other options that you might want from the properties panel down here. So that's numbered bar regions. Like I said, it feels a little bit hidden because you would probably need to set a shortcut to get to those, but they do exist if you want them on the iPad version. There's also, here's a little nerdy example for you, which is for things to do with beaming. So if you were in Engraved Mode here, and I change this beaming option, for example, like this. The problem is that you actually want this stem to be on the other side of the note, and so and Dorico's not doing that because I've just adjusted the beaming. So it's actually like it's the centered beaming options. So up here in this little 3-dot menu here, it's our context menu. If you go to stems, then you can do a custom centered beam, and you can choose the stem direction for each note and rest in the beam. So I'm going to say that the second one is down instead. So now I get a control here. Oops, I just nudged my camera, apologies for that. So now I get options here to say, actually, do I want to show this? See, now it would be completely wrong, but now I've got control over both of these. Now, this isn't the best example of these, but it just shows that you do have these options for centered beams. And if you need to reset any of these kind of things, then there's not only a remove centered beam option here, but also, of course, in the properties panel for these notes, you'll find, as you scroll across, that you'll see these beaming start offsets here. So if I choose these notes, I can turn the offsets off and put them back as they were. So there's some very neat options, even on the iPad, for doing those. Now, obviously, in Engraved Mode, you'd need to be subscribed to get maybe all of those features. But you do have these options for in the stems section here for these centered beams. Something that doesn't require a subscription, if you need things like changing bar numbers, so you can see this is bar 4 and bar 5. If I choose bar 4 here, let's do this in write mode, and choose my little 3-dot menu here, then I can go to bar numbers. Here's bar numbers, and do a bar number change. And you now have things like subordinate options, and the subordinate ones can hide the primary bar numbers. So you can say, maybe that this is A. So if I do that, then I get bar 3, and then I get bar A, B, and it will continue from there. And then if you need to, then it says 4 is later on, so it's continuing over there. And you can change, where these are set. So I can say, actually I needed 3A, and then I wanted 4. So I can go back to bar numbers here in my context menu, and I can say, actually, continue primary from this point, so it'll continue from bar 4. So now I've got 3A, 4. So maybe in musical theatre or various other examples, this could be a very useful way to just relabel those bar numbers, should you need to. There's also an option for player group labels. So if I just jump back over here to setup mode, we've got the guitars here. Let's put these in a group. So at the bottom of the menu down here, there's a little button here for groups. So I just tap that button and it's added my electric guitar into a group. There's also an option, if I choose an instrument, I can click on the little 3 dots and I can add player to a group, so I can put the second guitar also in that group. Now you can double click on this group name here and edit it, but that's only going to be editing the long version of that name, and you want the short version of the name as well. And you also want these player group labels to show over here. So let's turn them on to start off with. So you go to layout options, or you can use the same shortcut. And in here, in your layout options, where you have all of your options as you'd expect, in the staves and systems section, you can show player group names. This is very similar to version 4. So if I apply that, and I'll close that, so now I've got over here the little group label. So now I want to change this one, and this one, of course, will be different to this one that says group 1. So there's a short and a long version of this. So instead of double clicking over here, I can actually click on the group label, and then I can choose my rename player group option. So now I can say that this one is guitars, and maybe, oops, I didn't want to press tab, maybe the short name is GTR, maybe with a dot, and press OK. So now I've got a GTR, so let's just go into write mode. I've got a one there and guitars here. So maybe you're using this for strings and labeling A and B sections, or for 2 different string sections or something else. But you now have these player group labels. They also exist on the iPad should you want them. You can also remove things from a group, of course. You can just drag and drop these as well. So if you pick up one of your electric guitar players, you can drag and drop it and remove it from a group, and you can also drag and drop things and put them inside a group in the same way. Also, there's an option now let's go back to write mode, and over here in our menu we have an option for music fonts. So if you decide you want to switch to Petaluma, then you can do that at any point during a project. You can just switch your score over to use Petaluma instead. So we've now got the handwritten style, and if you want to switch back, you just go back to music fonts, click on Bravura, which is our normal style. There you go. And you can switch the font style at any point in your project. Now, I mentioned earlier about subscription type options. One of the things that's also changed in this release is that it supports family sharing, which means you only need a single subscription for all of the iPads in your family group. So if you're using that kind of thing, that could be very useful to you and save you some. And subscriptions now also have an introductory offer. If you choose the monthly subscription option, which is priced at $3.99 in dollars, or the equivalent in your currency, you'll benefit from an introductory period of 7 days. And if you choose the annual subscription option, where effectively you get 12 months for the price of 10, you'll also benefit from an introductory period of a month. So it's possible to try out all the subscription-only features in Dorico for the iPad free of charge for up to a month before you decide if you want to use them. And if you've been using Dorico for iPad without a subscription before, once you update, you'll get the chance to activate a new subscription. And that's just as you run the update for the first time. Otherwise, you can subscribe by tapping the subscribe button on the hub, or subscribe from the application menu. Mine doesn't exist because I'm already subscribed, but there'll be subscribe in here, and also from the hub, then you'll get a subscription option over there as well. So let's have a look at some of the things that also now feature in this if you do have a subscription. So, for example, if we switch over here, we've got all our normal options as you'd expect for everything else. But now, if we switch over, here to Galley View, so I'm doing that with a shortcut, which on the keyboard, but you can also do it from this little menu here. So the view options, you can switch between page view and you can switch to galley view. And what you now have here is this little instrument filter up here. So what I'm going to do, for example, is let's choose some keyboards. So I'll choose this one here, increase my selection, and choose this one here. So I now got both of these pianos. Maybe I'll put the organ in it as well. There we go. So I've chosen a few staves here. So now let's move that out of the way and click the plus. It's now added me a filter, an instrument filter, so it's just show me these instruments that I want to work on. If I click the little 3 dots up here, then I can edit this. So I could give it a new name. I can, do various other things with it. So if I tap the little pencil tool up here, then I could say these are actually they're not pianos, are they? There's an organ. So let's call them the keyboards section. So now I've got that one. I could also click on the button at the bottom here to add all the other ensembles. So you see I've added the ensembles. Actually, that one is now a duplicate of the one I already had. So now I've got a string section and guitars, and there's even some woodwinds in this file, and I can edit the instruments in the filter and do anything else. And now they exist up here as filters, so you can see the one I edited here and the one that it's added automatically. And you can also switch filters on and off with this little button up here. And you can also use these filters using the jump bar that I showed earlier. So if I press J, then if you type, for example, instrument filter, then you can choose, for example, the preset, and you can use them from there as well, or switch them from here. So there's lots of options for the instrument filters, just to make it a bit more usable which instruments you're seeing. And you'll see these dotted lines to show you that there are some instruments that are hidden at this point, because those other instruments are not being shown. So it's very, very similar to the desktop version of Dorico. There's also some options now for the transformations. So I'll quickly show you some of these. So let's say we'll take some of these notes. Let's have these ones here. And from the context menu, these 3 dots up here, I can now choose transform. And in pitches, for example, there's inversions, retrograde inversions, and various other things. I can map the scale. So let's choose a scale, and the destination scale pattern will be, let's say, super Locrian double flat 7. So we're changing from what we had to that one. So now it's changed the pitches of those notes. So like I said, you can do, retrogrades, inversions. You can also trigger these from the jump bar if you want to. And these all exist also in this little context menu for transform. So there's transform pitches, there's transform rhythms, and various other things. So you can, do all sorts of things that you will need to do using the transform options. You might have, quite a lot of fun playing with some of those, and you can now do that very easily on the iPad. There's also options. Let's say we wanted to add some chord symbols. So actually, let's just remove some of these chord symbols for a second. So I'll choose a chord symbol. I'm just going to use select more on my keyboard. So Command-Shift-A or Control-Shift-A, just to delete a few of those chords. So now if I choose a note here, and let's say, in fact, let's take from this one, and I'm going to increase the selection and go to here. I can now go over here to the context menu, and I can say chord symbols and diagrams, generate chord symbols. I can choose my options from this dialog and press OK, and it will generate the chord symbols. And you may be thinking those aren't the same chord symbols that you had a moment ago, because I didn't select the bass notes. So if I remove those, and while I've got my increase selection option on, I'll choose the lower notes as well. I can now go over here, and I can choose chord symbols and diagrams again, generate chord symbols, and just press OK, and I now get some more chord symbols. Now actually I didn't need that one because it's a duplicate, so let's just delete that one. There we go. But now you can see generating chord symbols from the notes that are on there, and that's now also available on the iPad. You will need a subscription for that one, but it's available on the iPad. If you're making adjustments to things in Engraved Mode, then when you choose something here, you'll see you also have crosshairs. So if you move it, you can tell where it is aligned, and if it's aligned with things exactly, which can be very, very useful. That's also useful if you're using things like dynamics, I guess. So, when you choose a dynamic, you want to see if things are lined up, you can do that. Also for things like slurs. So if I move the end of this slur, you can see the crosshairs there. So, oops, sorry, streaming issue there with the graphics. So you can move the end of this and make sure it's all lined up exactly where you need it to be in a straight line or otherwise, and that can be very useful for positioning. There's also an option which is on the desktop version with some buttons in Engraved Mode, so maybe we'll add some new buttons over here. But let's say, for example, we need a bar do this in write mode. Let's say we need a bar, and we need to be in page view, to be on a different page. So let's say this bar here wants to be on the next page. So now I have a keyboard attached. If I just press full stop, then I can normally, no, it will just edit that little rest that I'd chosen. But if I'm in engraved mode and I press full stop, that's the commands to move that bar to the next page. So now we've got 1, 2, 3, A, because we changed it earlier, and now bar 4 is over here. And if I just undo that, and I choose this bar over here, and I press, well, let's say we want to move it the other way. So if I press comma to the button to the left, then it moves here. So I've now got 1, 2, 3, A, 4, 5 on this one, and Dorico's adding the system breaks automatically for me. So it can be a very quick way of just making sure your formatting is correct. And like I said, we'll probably add some buttons over here in the near future. But at the moment, you can use those with a QWERTY keyboard attached, just with comma and full stop. You can also change the project language. So if you go up to the the menu up here, you can change the project language. So the instrument names language, for example, you could change. So if I'm sending this to my colleague Marcus, I can change it to German. So now I have German instrument names. Or if he sends me a project and I want to switch it back, I can switch it back to English. So you can do that at any point during your project. If you do have an Apple Pencil, then one option you might like, let's just zoom out a bit here. If you use a 4-finger tap on the screen, you go into a read mode in Dorico. Now this is normally more useful if you're probably in portrait mode and you have the iPad on a music stand. But while I'm attached and streaming this one with the camera and everything else, I'll just switch into read mode and you can see the same page anyway. So when I tap on the right hand side of the screen, it changes pages, and when I tap on the left, it goes to the previous page. Now the difference here now is that there's a little pencil tool up here. So now, if I have an Apple Pencil, while I can still tap on the screen with my finger, I can now write on the screen as well. So if I wanted to, for example, see I've got a smaller line chosen here, I can choose a colour for it, and now I can circle things. So if I wanted to circle a particular chord or underline something, I can do that. There's also a highlighter tool here, so if I want to highlight a section, I can do that. I can still switch pages. I can change the colour of the highlight. And those kind of things, and they will all be, where you expect them to be, where you've put them. So, and you can write on here as well, so you can say, that's all, folks. So you've got annotations and everything else, and if you leave this mode and then come back into this mode, then of course you still have all of the annotations that you would expect that you added to this. There's also a little rubber here, a eraser, so you can erase things if you need to. And like I said, you will need an Apple Pencil for this one. It's an actual useful use for an Apple Pencil on an iPad. But when you tap with your finger, it's not going to write because that's the one that you'd use to change pages. So let's just leave that mode. But actually, that's not all, folks. There's another option I'd like to show you as well. So that's that on the iPads now, I think it's from iOS 15, there's a split view mode where you can split the screen and run more than one application at the same time. So if I just tap on the screen here, you'll see you get these 3 tiny dots at the top, and if I click on those 3 tiny dots, then I get these 3 buttons. The middle button will then push Dorico to one side and say, which other application do you want to run? So you could, for example, run Fourscore, which is one I use just to show PDFs and that kind of thing. So you can turn pages in Fourscore. You can do set lists and that kind of thing in Fourscore if you want to. There's set list options and various other things. And it's just to display PDFs. But maybe I've got a PDF and I'm looking at this and then I'm working on something in Dorico, maybe referencing the chords or a melody or anything else. So you can have this in a split screen mode. You can also click on the little option here, and you can click on the option to the right, and that one will make this program float over the top. So I can now use Dorico underneath, and I can have this application floating over the top, which can be very neat. And then if you click on this little option again, you can go back to split, and it can say which side you want to split. So I've split it onto that side, and you can switch them over if you want to. So if I go back to Dorico over here and say, actually I want to put Dorico back into full screen, then you can do that. You can also do this with various other applications. So if I do that again and say maybe I want to go into Word, then I can be referencing lyrics or something else over here while I'm working on Dorico. Again, I could make this one float if I wanted to. So this is now saying, if you can see it, the email address for these sessions is discoverdorico@steinberg.de. And if you like these videos, please tap subscribe under the video and tap on the bell icon to be notified when future sessions are available. You could also do things, for example, like, in fact, actually, let's just turn this one off for a second to go back to a different application. Maybe you're bringing in some music from Music or Play Score or something like that. So these applications can do things like take a photo of some music, or in this case this was a PDF, and it can play it to you, and then there's a button up here to save as music XML, and that can just send it directly into Dorico on the iPad, or you can send it to a desktop computer if you want to. So if you've then basically it's converting this PDF into music XML that you put into Dorico. So maybe you then need to do a bit of error checking, spotting anything that's changed here in the Dorico file. So you can be working on both of these at the same time. And I guess if you have a larger iPad, this is only an iPad Air, but if you have a larger iPad, then you'll see even more of each application on the screen if you want to do that. But that's the split view option, and Dorico now works with that on iOS 15. So hopefully that's given you a good overview of what some of the new features are in this new version, which is for iPad version 2.0. If you have any questions, please let us know. Maybe what would you like to see in a future version on the iPad as well as the desktop. I think you can see now that whereas when the iPad version came out, it had some of the new features which then made it into Dorico 4 on the desktop, and then when Dorico 4 on the desktop came out, there were some things that we've now added to the iPad, so I think they're now very much on a level with each other, with the same feature sets in both. So I hope you've enjoyed this session. Please let me know in the comments, or if there's anything else you'd like to look at, if you have any questions. Or, like I said, you can email me on discoverdorico@steinberg.de. So until next time, thank you very much for watching.